When Sloane Bennett collapsed at work, she expected to wake up in a hospital. Instead, she opened her eyes in her boss's penthouse, expensive sheets, city lights, and Dr. Gabriel Cross sitting beside her bed like he had every right to be there. He'd crossed every professional line to bring her here. And the worst part? She didn't want to leave. If you love stories where the lines blur and the tension is unbearable, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Let's dive into today's chapter. The last thing Sloane remembered was the fluorescent lights overhead starting to tilt. She'd been standing at the reception desk, confirming appointments for Dr. Cross's afternoon schedule, when the edges of her vision went soft. The phone in her hand suddenly weighed too much. Then nothing. Now she was waking up to dimmed lamps and the kind of silence that only existed in expensive places. The sheets beneath her felt like they cost more than her monthly rent. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Manhattan glittering 40 stories below. This wasn't the practice's recovery room. Her head turned slowly, and that's when she saw him. Dr. Gabriel Cross sat in an armchair pulled close to the bed, still wearing his work clothes but with his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up. He was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Where am I?" Her voice came out rough. "My place." His answer was matter-of-fact, but something flickered in his dark eyes. "Don't try to sit up yet." Sloane's mind struggled to piece it together. She'd been at work. The morning had been brutal. Back-to-back patient consultations, insurance calls, Dr. Cross's demanding schedule that never seemed to slow down. She'd skipped breakfast. Again. Maybe lunch too. "You collapsed during Mrs. Patterson's consultation," he said, as if reading her thoughts. Scared the hell out of her. And me. That last part was quieter, almost like he hadn't meant to say it. "I should be in a hospital." She managed to prop herself up on one elbow, ignoring the way the room swayed slightly. "I evaluated you thoroughly." His tone shifted into doctor mode, clinical and assured. Severe exhaustion, dehydration, low blood sugar, possible burnout. Nothing that requires a costly ER visit and a bed you'd have to fight insurance to cover. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What you need is rest, proper nutrition, and someone making sure you actually do both. That's not happening if I send you back to your apartment in Queens." Sloane stared at him. In 3 months of working at his exclusive Upper East Side practice, she'd never seen Dr. Gabriel Cross like this. He was always controlled, professional, maintaining perfect distance from everyone. Patients loved him, staff respected him, but no one really knew him. Right now, with his perfectly styled dark hair slightly mussed and concern etched in the sharp lines of his face, he looked almost human. "You can't just bring employees home, Dr. Cross." "Gabriel." Something in his expression shifted, and I just did. The air between them felt different than it ever had at the office. Maybe it was the intimacy of the bedroom, or the way the city lights cast shadows across his features, or the fact that she was wearing someone else's t-shirt. His t-shirt, she realized with a jolt. "How long was I out?" 4 hours. I've been monitoring your vitals." He gestured to a medical bag on the nearby dresser. "Your blood pressure is stabilizing." Sloane looked down at herself, at the oversized Columbia Medical School shirt that definitely wasn't hers, at the expensive sheets, at the glass of water with a straw on the nightstand that he'd obviously placed there for her. "This is wildly inappropriate," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Probably." Gabriel's mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. "But I'm not apologizing." The confidence in that statement did something to her pulse that had nothing to do with dehydration. She'd felt it before, in small moments at the practice, when his hand steadied her lower back as they navigated around a patient, when he stayed late going over charts and their conversations drifted beyond professional, when she caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. She'd convinced herself she was imagining it. "You need to eat." He stood, and Sloane noticed for the first time how tall he was without the context of the office. "I'm ordering food. No arguments." "I should go home." "In the morning, after you've rested and eaten a proper meal." His voice was firm, leaving no room for negotiation. "Doctor's orders." Then he walked out, leaving Sloane alone in his guest room, her heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with her collapse. Sloane woke to unfamiliar sounds, not the sirens and garbage trucks of her Queens neighborhood, but something quieter. Water running somewhere in the apartment, the soft hum of expensive appliances. Morning light filtered through sheer curtains she didn't recognize, and for a disorienting moment, she forgot where she was. Then it came back. The collapse. Gabriel. His penthouse. She sat up slowly, relieved when the room stayed steady. Her clothes from yesterday were folded neatly on a chair, cleaned and pressed. Someone had done that. He had done that. The smell of coffee drew her out of the guest room. She padded down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than her student loans, following the scent to an open kitchen that looked like something from a magazine. All marble and stainless steel and windows that made the city feel close enough to touch. Gabriel stood at the counter, his back to her, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. He was barefoot, wearing dark gray sweatpants and nothing else. Sloane stopped in the doorway, her breath catching at the sight of him. She'd seen him in expensive suits every day for 3 months, always perfectly put together, always untouchable. This version was something else entirely. Broad shoulders tapering to a lean waist, the kind of muscle definition that came from discipline rather than vanity. A small scar near his left shoulder blade that made her wonder about its story. He turned, catching her staring, and something flickered in his expression before he masked it. "Coffee," he said, holding out one of the mugs. 2 sugars, little cream, right? The fact that he knew how she took her coffee did something to her chest. She crossed the kitchen, hyper-aware of how the borrowed t-shirt barely reached mid-thigh, how his gaze tracked her movement. Their fingers brushed as she took the mug. The contact lasted a second too long. "Thank you," she managed. "For everything. Last night, I mean, and the coffee." Gabriel leaned against the counter, studying her with those intense dark eyes that seemed to see too much. "You scared me yesterday. When you went down, I thought—" He stopped, jaw tightening. The vulnerability in that unfinished sentence hung between them. "I'm fine now," Sloane said softly. "Really. You're not fine. You've been running yourself into the ground since you started. I see you staying late, skipping lunch, taking on extra shifts." His voice was quiet but firm. Why? The question was too direct, too personal for 7 a.m. in her boss's kitchen. But something about the way he asked it, the genuine concern in his expression, made her answer honestly. "I needed this job. Your practice, it's elite. I came from Bellevue, from chaos and overwork and never enough resources. This was my shot at something better." She wrapped both hands around the warm mug. "I couldn't afford to be anything less than perfect." Gabriel set his coffee down, moving closer. The space between them narrowed to nothing. "You collapsed in my exam room, Sloane. That's not perfect. That's not even sustainable." His hand lifted, hesitated, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was careful, almost reverent. "You're brilliant at what you do. You don't have to destroy yourself to prove it." His fingers lingered near her jaw, and Sloane's heart was doing things that had nothing to do with her health scare. She could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive, could see the exact moment his gaze dropped to her mouth. The air shifted, charged with something they'd both been pretending didn't exist. "Gabriel," she whispered, not sure if it was a warning or an invitation. He stepped back abruptly, running a hand through his hair. "Breakfast. You need to eat." The moment shattered, but its echo remained. Sloane watched him move to the refrigerator, noting the tension in his shoulders, the deliberate way he was creating distance. She should leave. This was already complicated enough, but when he started pulling out ingredients, when he told her to sit and let him cook for once, she found herself settling onto one of the bar stools, found herself wanting to stay. By late afternoon, Sloane knew she should leave. She'd eaten, rested, proven she was stable, but Gabriel kept finding reasons for her to stay a little longer. One more vitals check, another glass of water, a movie on his ridiculous home theater system while he caught up on patient files. She'd changed back into her own clothes, though they felt strange now after wearing his shirt. Professional armor back in place, except nothing felt professional anymore. The knock on the door came just as the movie credits rolled. Gabriel's expression shifted instantly, something guarded sliding into place. He wasn't expecting anyone. Sloane could tell by the way his shoulders tensed as he moved to the intercom. The voice that came through made her stomach drop. "Gabriel, I know you're there. We need to talk. Female, confident, familiar in a way that suggested history." Gabriel's jaw tightened. He pressed the button without answering, then turned to Sloane with an unreadable expression. "That's my ex-fiancée. She has terrible timing." The words hit Sloane like cold water. Ex-fiancée. Of course someone like Gabriel had a past, probably a complicated one. But hearing it now, in his apartment where she'd spent the last 18 hours in this strange, intimate bubble, felt like a door slamming shut. "I should go," Sloane said, standing quickly. "No." His voice was firm. "Stay, please." Before she could argue, he opened the door. The woman who walked in was stunning, tall, polished, wearing Chanel and confidence like she owned both. Her gaze swept the apartment, landing on Sloane with the kind of assessment that took in everything in seconds. "Diana," Gabriel said, his tone carefully neutral. "What are you doing here?" Diana's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. "I heard you had a medical emergency at the practice yesterday. I was concerned." Her eyes stayed on Sloane, and there was nothing concerned in that look. "This is Sloane Bennett," Gabriel continued, and Sloane hated how formal his voice had become. "She's my medical assistant. She had a health incident yesterday, and I've been monitoring her recovery. How dedicated of you." Diana's smile was sharp. "Though I'm surprised you brought her here instead of, say, an actual hospital." The tension in the room was suffocating. Sloane wanted to disappear, to escape this obvious power play she'd somehow stumbled into. But Gabriel's hand found the small of her back, steady and warm. "My medical judgment isn't up for debate," he said quietly. "Was there something you actually needed?" Diana's composure cracked slightly. "We were supposed to meet, about the foundation gala. You forgot." Sloane watched Gabriel's expression shift to something like regret. She hadn't known he was involved in foundation work, hadn't known he had standing appointments with his ex-fiancée. How many other things didn't she know? "I'll reschedule," Gabriel said. "Will you?" Diana's gaze flickered between them, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Or are you too busy playing doctor?" The dismissal in her tone made Sloane's spine straighten. She'd spent 3 months proving herself in an elite practice, earning respect from demanding patients and staff. She wasn't about to be reduced to some unprofessional scandal by a woman who didn't know her. "Dr. Cross saved me from an expensive ER visit and potentially dangerous complications," Sloane said evenly. "I'm grateful for his care. And his professionalism." The emphasis on that last word landed exactly as she intended. Diana's smile turned cold. "Of course. How fortunate for you." She left moments later, but the damage was done. The easy intimacy of the morning felt impossibly far away. Gabriel stood at the window, watching the street below. "I'm sorry. That was unfair to you." Sloane grabbed her bag, needing distance, needing air. "Why didn't you tell me you were engaged?" "Was engaged 3 years ago." He turned to face her. "It ended badly. We stayed civil for professional reasons. Foundation work, mutual colleagues. But it's over, Sloane." The way he said her name made her chest ache. "I should get home," she said softly. "Thank you for everything." She made it to the elevator before he caught up. his hand gentle on her arm. Don't let her ruin this, whatever this is. Sloane looked up at him, at the vulnerability in his dark eyes, and felt herself wavering. I don't even know what this is, Gabriel. Neither do I. His thumb traced a small circle on her wrist. But I want to find out. The elevator doors opened. Sloane stepped inside, her heart racing. I'll see you at work Monday, she said. His expression shuddered, but he nodded. The doors closed between them, and Sloane leaned against the wall, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Monday morning felt like walking into a different world. Sloane arrived at the practice 15 minutes early, her usual routine, but everything felt off balance. The weekend had been torture. She'd replayed every moment at Gabriel's penthouse, analyzed every word, every touch, until she couldn't tell what was real and what she'd imagined. She'd almost texted him a dozen times, deleted every draft. The morning started normally enough. Patients arrived, appointments ran on schedule, and Gabriel was his usual professional self. Polite, distant, like nothing had happened, except for the way his gaze lingered when he thought she wasn't looking. By noon, the tension was suffocating. They moved around each other carefully, all please and thank you and perfect professionalism that felt like a lie. Then Lauren from billing caught Sloane in the break room. So, rough weekend? Lauren's tone was casual, but her eyes were sharp with curiosity. Sloane froze, coffee cup halfway to her lips. What? I saw you leaving Dr. Cross's building Saturday afternoon. Lauren smiled, but it wasn't friendly. The Berkshire, right? Pretty fancy recovery location. The blood drained from Sloane's face. You saw me? I was visiting a friend in the area. Lauren leaned against the counter, examining her nails. I'm not judging. I mean, if I collapsed and woke up in a penthouse with a man who looks like that, I'd take my time leaving too. The implication hung in the air like poison. It wasn't like that, Sloane said quietly. I had a medical emergency. He was being a good doctor. Sure. Lauren's smile widened. That's definitely what it looked like. She left before Sloane could respond, and the damage was already done. By 2:00, Sloane could feel the shift. Whispers in the hallway. Looks from the other staff. The kind of attention that made her skin crawl. She was filing charts when Gabriel appeared beside her, his voice low. My office. Now. His tone left no room for argument. The moment the door closed behind them, he turned to face her, jaw tight with barely controlled anger. Lauren's spreading rumors. He didn't waste time with preamble. About you being at my apartment. Sloane's hands clenched at her sides. She saw me leaving. Saturday. Gabriel swore under his breath, running a hand through his hair. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid. Well, it's happening anyway. Sloane's voice was sharper than she intended. So what do we do? The we in that sentence hung between them, weighted with implications. Gabriel moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the conflict in his dark eyes. I could tell them the truth, that you had a medical emergency and I provided appropriate care. He paused, something raw flickering across his face. Or I could tell them the real truth, which is that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since Friday night, that having you in my home, seeing you in my shirt, watching you sleep in my guest room, it broke something in me I didn't know needed breaking. His voice dropped lower. That every professional boundary I've maintained for 3 years disappeared the moment you collapsed in my arms. Sloane's breath caught. Gabriel. He was close enough to touch now, his hand lifting to cup her face with a gentleness that made her chest ache. Tell me to stop, he said quietly. Tell me this is just my imagination, and I'll walk away. I'll transfer you to another practice with a glowing recommendation. I'll make sure your career never suffers for this. But Sloane was done pretending. Done lying to herself about what she wanted. She closed the distance between them, rising on her toes to press her lips to his. The kiss started gentle, questioning, but ignited into something desperate within seconds. Gabriel's hand slid into her hair, angling her head as he deepened the kiss. His other arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against him. Sloane's fingers found the collar of his shirt, holding on as the world tilted. He kissed like he did everything else, with complete focus and devastating precision, like she was the only thing that mattered. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Gabriel rested his forehead against hers. "We're going to get caught," he murmured. "This office has glass walls. Then we'd better figure out what we're going to say." Sloane's voice was unsteady but determined. "Because I'm not walking away from this." Gabriel pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, and what she saw there made her heart stutter. "Neither am I." The ethics meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. 3 days of walking on eggshells, of stolen glances and careful distance. 3 days of Sloane wondering if they'd just destroyed everything for one kiss in an office with glass walls. Thursday night, her phone buzzed with a text from Gabriel. "Can you come to my office after everyone leaves?" Her heart hammered as she typed back a simple yes. The practice was empty by 6:30. Sloane found Gabriel at his desk, tie loosened, looking more exhausted than she'd ever seen him. "I talked to the board today," he said without preamble. "About us." Sloane's stomach dropped. "You what?" "I told them the truth, that I have feelings for you, that those feelings started before your medical incident but intensified after, that I've maintained complete professionalism, but I can't anymore." He stood, moving around the desk. "I also told them I'm bringing in a partner, Dr. Sarah Chen from Mount Sinai. She'll share management duties, which means I won't be your direct supervisor." Sloane stared at him. "You're restructuring your entire practice? For you?" His voice was steady, certain. "Yes." "Gabriel, that's insane. This is your life's work." "No." He stepped closer, his hand finding hers. "This is just my career. You're something else entirely." The simplicity of that statement hit her harder than any grand gesture could have. "But there's something else," he continued. "An opportunity came up. Dr. Chen mentioned that her friend is opening a women's health clinic, equity partnership, full autonomy, incredible team. She thought you'd be perfect for it." Sloane's breath caught. I don't know what to say. "Say you'll consider it." Gabriel's thumb traced circles on her palm. "I'm not asking you to choose between your career and me. I'm asking you to choose the career you actually want, and maybe, if you want, choose me too." The vulnerability in his eyes undid her. "I already chose you," she whispered, "when I kissed you back, when I didn't walk away." Gabriel pulled her closer, his hand cupping her face with that same devastating gentleness. "I'm going to kiss you again now," he murmured, "and I'm not going to apologize for it." "Good," Sloane breathed. "Don't." This kiss was different, slower, deeper, full of promises instead of desperation. His hands slid into her hair, angling her head as he explored her mouth with thorough precision. Sloane's fingers found the buttons of his shirt, not opening them, just holding on as the world narrowed to just this, just them. When they finally broke apart, Gabriel rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing hard. "Come home with me," he said softly. "Not as your doctor, not as your boss, just as the man who's completely gone for you." Sloane smiled against his lips. "Your place or mine? Mine has better coffee, and a guest room you've already broken in." She laughed, and it felt like freedom. 3 months later, Sloane stood in her new clinic, watching the sun set over Manhattan through her own office window. The equity papers were signed, her team was exceptional, and tonight Gabriel was picking her up for dinner, not sneaking around, not hiding, just 2 people building something together. Her phone buzzed. "Downstairs. Take your time." Sloane grabbed her coat, locked her office, and headed down. Gabriel was leaning against his car, and when he saw her, his face lit up in a way that still made her heart stutter. "How was your first week?" he asked, pulling her close. "Perfect." She kissed him, right there on the street, not caring who saw. Absolutely perfect. As they drove through the city, Sloane thought about that day she'd collapsed, how terrifying it had been, how it had felt like everything was falling apart. She hadn't known it was actually the beginning of everything falling into place. We hope you loved Sloane and Gabriel's story. Rate it from 1 to 10 in the comments below and let us know what you thought. Thank you so much for being here and sharing this journey with us. Your support means everything. A new chapter is coming soon. Don't miss it. Bye-bye.